Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. We would like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial and those who will join us later on 3cr.org.au/podcasts. In this week's episode, we will be listening to two interviews. The first one recorded by Robert Martin in Palestine with Nurit Peled about the propaganda and ideology and hate in Israeli school books and curricula. And also Nasser spoke with another Israeli, Gideon Levy from Haaretz. So stay with us and enjoy the episode. Good morning, Robert and Nasser.
Hi, Yusuf.
Good morning, Nasser. Good morning, Yusuf.
Now, we have two items on our plate this week. We have an interview, Robert, which you will talk to us about. You recorded during your visit to Palestine a few weeks ago.
I did.
And also, we have another interview that our other correspondent recorded in the last few days. So let's start with Robert. Tell us about what we are going to hear in a few seconds.
So Nurit Peled is a professor and she did a study on the education system. Now, I believe a lot of people don't believe what's going on.
The education system of the Israeli education system. This
Curriculum.
is the education system that's taught to young Jewish children.
In fact, from the age of 3 upwards is what we discussed. I believe a lot of the world doesn't click with what's going on over there because it's so absurd. And part of what I asked her, I pretty blatantly just asked whether or not the Israeli education system is racist. And she said yes. And there's a bit that I actually just will mention. So when you hear it, you'll go, oh my goodness. She said if there was a racist manual written, the Israeli education system has followed it to a T.
Wow.
And I was shocked, the fact that she said this, but also when she uses some of the different examples. But a few days before that, I had been walking around, and I will play some of the audio, because I was asking the Israeli Jews what they thought of the Palestinians. And some of what I heard was horrifically filthy, horrible language. And I sort of understand now why. Because from the age of 3,
they are taught
to hate, to fear, and that if things don't change or they aren't protecting themselves from the entire world, not just the Palestinians, that the Holocaust will come again.
Yeah, I mean, what we should, Rob, you didn't mention, was Nurit's Nurit Peled's sister.
Yes.
She's a professor. Of education. And her own daughter was...
13-year-old was killed.
13-year-old was killed by a suicide bomber in the Second Intifada. Now, I mean, if anybody...
And nevertheless, she chose not to blame the victim.
Correct. And she wants to look at the root cause.
The cause of that.
And this is someone that's obviously grown up and lived in it. So Miko's book obviously was the general's son. So they were brought up in a very Zionist family. Yeah. And so they understand it from the inside out.
So we are going to listen to an interview, or maybe part 1, I would say.
It's part 1.
Part 1
maybe 4.
Of the interview that Robert Martin recorded with Nurit Peled-Elhanan, author of the book Palestine in Israeli School Books, Ideology and Propaganda in Education. Stay with us and we will be back shortly.
My name is Robert and I'm in Palestine, and I'm honoured to be sitting here with Nurit Peled-Elhanan. And I have a book here that everyone must read. And I was hoping that you might be able to tell us maybe how you came up with the idea of studying it, or I think it just happened, but also I continually hear that the Palestinians teach hate and the Israelis teach peace.
No, really.
So tell me about your book and your study.
First of all, the Palestinians don't teach hate.
So that's something that we don't hear. We don't hear about that.
You don't hear about that.
No.
In East Jerusalem, they still study the Palestinian curriculum, but it is controlled by Israel, so they get a book where half the pages are blank because they are erased, deleted. And they cannot teach anything about themselves. They can teach, I think, Islam until the 17th century, but nothing that has to do with nationality and with today. You see? They cannot teach about the refugees. They cannot teach about the Nakba. And I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority, not in Israel. In Israel, the Palestinian students study the same curriculum as the Jews, translated to Arabic.
Wow,
So they learn about the Zionist project and the redemption of the land and the wonderful project of settlement and occupation and this and that. They have maybe, just yesterday, a student of mine told me that she saw her niece's books, and they have about 2 pages about Palestinian history and culture. Nothing. They don't know Mahmoud Darwish. You see, but they do know Israeli poets. National, what they call national poets.
So they're not even allowed to learn about their own things.
Oh, no.
Culture,
no, they don't. They don't. I have a course where we teach Arab teachers of Hebrew.
Yep.
And many of them tell me, so what I do, there's no program for teaching that. I teach translation theory. So we took, articles, and we took works and so on. And the students say, and the students are all teachers, and they say it's the first time I read Mahmoud Darwish. It's the first time I read this and that.
So that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
one of them told me, I thought it was the songs of Marcel Khalifa. I didn't even know.
So that's sad. So you can't even learn about yourself.
And so they don't learn anything about themselves. Of course, they cannot say anything bad about Israel. And so this is slander. Of course, outside the ministry, you have all kinds of groups that publish all kinds of books, just like here, about these rabbis who published books that say you can rape enemy women and you should kill enemy babies. And these books are given to soldiers. They were given to soldiers just before they entered Gaza.
Say that again, because that's really important. So they're given
There are rabbis
books
in Israel who wrote a few books, one called The King's Road, and the other, I don't remember, where they say it's, according to Jewish halakha, you can rape enemy women and you can kill enemy babies. And this book, there was a trial, and the rabbi, he didn't get to jail, but something. And he's free now, and he still teaches. And
he's a rabbi.
Not only one, a few. And their books were distributed to soldiers before getting into Gaza. But this is not the Ministry of Education, so you cannot say these are textbooks.
Yeah.
Everyone can publish whatever they want,
but it's well known.
But they are not punished, these people. This is what I'm saying.
What if it was a Palestinian doing that sort of thing?
They are punished for something they write on Facebook, and they're in Tatur and all these stories. So they really cannot. They cannot, even if they want to. Whenever you have the stamp of the Palestinian Ministry of Education, it is heavily censored. I don't think they want to teach hate. This is another point for them. You see, you teach hate and you teach racism when you want to dehumanize people in order to control them, right? Or eliminate them or exterminate them. You don't do it when you want to be liberated. Yeah. It's not useful. Okay?
Yeah. So talking about that, the study that you did on the
Palestine in Israeli school books.
Yeah.
And I think also the ideology and propaganda in education is a huge thing.
This is not my idea. This is the publishers.
Yeah, no, but it stands out of what it is.
Yeah.
So tell us about the study that you did, because I think people need to realise that you're a professor.
Yeah.
You're highly educated, and this isn't something that you just decided to do. It's something that sort of evolved. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. When I started my academic career, I wanted to study all the aspects of educational discourse. Language development in school, writing development, classroom dialogue, multiculturalism, racism, and so on. I went from one to another, and then when I got to the racism, I learned racism in class, because racism in Israel is, Israeli discourse is a racist discourse, not only towards Palestinians, but towards Jewish minorities as well. So I studied that. And then I wanted to see how the books use scientific discourse in order to convey ideologies. There's a lot of study about that other places, and I started, and then I saw that the way they present Palestinians is the main issue. So I did that, and that's how this book came about.
And tell us about the book and the study. What did you find?
Well, I find that the books, if there was a racist manual to write books, they follow it by the letter. Okay?
Wow.
All the categories of racist discourse are there, both visual and verbal, and rhetorical, rhetoric. You see, because other people who study Israeli school books do content analysis, and when you do content analysis, you don't study the rhetoric. So, for example, there was a big discussion about whether Israeli school books mention the Nakba or not, because in an Israeli school book translated to Arabic, it was not allowed to say the word Nakba or the Green Line or whatever. But they do mention the Nakba. But what do they say about the Nakba? They say it was for the best.
So they justify it.
They legitimate it a posteriori, you see, by the consequences. And so content analysis is not enough. Say if Nakba or not Nakba. Yes, there is the Nakba, but by the end of the chapter they say that the Nakba enabled us to create a Jewish state with a Jewish majority, and this was a miracle. This was the best thing we can do.
A miracle.
So they don't say how jolly they died, but the consequences legitimate it. Okay?
Yeah.
We call it consequential explanation in semiotics.
Okay.
You take the consequences and you make them into cause.
It's very powerful too,
It
especially
is.
when people are
It
susceptible
is.
to
Yeah, and you have it in many places in Australia.
Of course.
All those colonialist places and other places,
Yeah.
So it's in use. And now racism, first of all, Palestinians are never shown as normal human beings. And in Israel you have hundreds of books because it's private industry. Only as terrorists, primitive farmers and refugees. Hordes of refugees that are, threatening.
Wow. So that's what they...
And you don't see a teacher, a doctor, a dancer, a real estate man, merchant, whatever. They are always defined as a problem, Palestinian problem, like the Jewish problem. Defining people as problem is
And this is throughout
racist.
all of the books, whether it's geography,
all the books,
whether it's English, Hebrew,
everything,
whatever it is.
Everything, yeah. They
Wow.
are the minority, they are the problem, a demographic problem, a developmental problem, because they don't want to develop, they don't want to modernize.
Have they no idea, the Palestinians? That's just so opposite.
Yeah, and a security threat, of course. So they are a problem, they are the enemy, and that's what the children know. They don't know anything else because they never meet Palestinians. In maps, you don't have Palestinian cities even inside Israel. You can have a map of Palestinian population inside Israel, and you don't have Nazareth, Acre, or Fahim there.
It's just taken out.
It's taken out, and the impression is that they live on us, upon us, you see? So the impression is very threatening. universities in Israel, for example, there's a map. So you have this tiniest extension of a university in the Jewish colonies in Palestine, but you don't have any major Palestinian university. Or a map of Jerusalem where they show you cultural, governmental, and administrative sites. They show you the eastern part of the city empty, except for
empty
except for the Wailing Wall or something, you see. So there's nothing. The idea is to promote the idea that they don't exist, which is also in Israeli general life. They don't exist. They're not part of the economy. They're not part of the culture. When you say, for example, Israeli theater, you don't think about the Arab Israeli theaters.
No.
Or Israeli cinema, although Israeli Palestinian cinema is one of the best in the world, you never hear about that. Or Israeli literature or whatever. You don't count, or music, the Israeli Palestinian one, although they are 25% of the population already. So they just don't exist. But there is this problem, this threat that we have to tackle in order to defend what they call our defensive democracy. And
so I shouldn't laugh, but the democracy bit,
yes,
that gets me.
Otherwise we shall have another Auschwitz, another Treblinka. This is in the books. This is what I'm working on now, the Holocaust rhetoric of these books. Everything is to prevent another Treblinka or another Auschwitz.
So from the age of 3, I think you said, from the age of 3 it begins? Whether it's so the propaganda starts at the age of 3.
Yes, and also Holocaust education.
Yep.
I mean, on one hand, you traumatize them.
Yep.
You turn them into heterophobic human beings. They're afraid of anyone who is a foreigner, who is not Jewish.
Because I see that in the kids' eyes. I can see it in the soldiers' eyes. That's exactly what I can see.
Yeah. Everyone is anti-Semitic. And so on one hand, you have this horrible Holocaust education, which is re-traumatizing every year.
And this is starting from the age of 3.
It starts from the age of 3 now, yes. And on the other hand, you have this militaristic education, military men coming to the kindergartens and so on and so forth. And, children are educated to be soldiers. This is it.
Because they need to be protecting the...
Yeah, they need to protect their land, to protect... And so they are constantly in panic. And they mix, when you're 6 years old or 5 years old, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, Pharaoh, the ancient Persian, the Arabs, the Nazis are all the same for them. They all the time want to exterminate us. All the time. You can imagine, Ethiopian children who came yesterday and all this is imposed on them. They wet in their beds. They are terrible things. And
so that they're wetting their beds because of the education?
Yes. Around the Holocaust Day and Memorial Day and all this, I volunteer here in the what they call absorption center, which is a kind of a ghetto that they built for the Ethiopians. Horrible place. That's what the mothers say. They wet in their beds, and I went to read books to the children once. So they brought me very nice children's books. And I asked the little girl, what is it here? She said, this is a soldier. He coming to kill us. Whatever. And one little boy...
Because kids shouldn't be thinking this.
One little boy told me the Arabs, they destroyed our temple and they drove us out of Egypt and they killed 6 Israelis in Germany. He said, 6, So it's all mixed up.
It's a complete brainwash.
It's a brainwash.
It is a
complete. It's a mind infection. Richard Dawkins talks about mind infection. It's much more than brainwash. I mean, they grow up in panic, complete, constant, permanent panic.
Wow. So when they, because I know that, so they don't get fairy tales. They get butchering stories about how everyone's after us.
Yes.
And then
all the time.
So when they get into
every holiday is accompanied by another massacre that is told, whatever holidays we have, okay? If it's Hanukkah, if it's Purim, if it's a Passover, it always has to be with some kind of massacre, some kind of extermination, and God saved us.
That was Nurit Peled and an interview recorded by Robert Martin. You're listening to Palestine Remembered on 855 AM. Nasser, you also recorded another great interview with another Israeli visiting Australia. Tell us about that.
So we've been very fortunate in Australia to have Gideon Levy here from Haaretz newspaper. He was brought out by the Australian Friends of Palestine Association in South Australia to present the Edward Said Memorial Lecture, which he did last Saturday. And as well as that, they had a 3-day BDS conference, which is our second BDS conference in Australia, which was fantastic. He spoke at the Edward Said Memorial Lecture. He was on Late Line, which we'll put a link on at the podcast, and again at the State Library on Thursday. And he spoke to state parliamentarians on Thursday afternoon.
Huge success.
So, huge success. So here's some thoughts and perhaps a quick debrief on his actual speech that he gave on Thursday night.
And we will put also parts of his speech in Melbourne in future episodes. So you'll be listening to Gideon Levy. Stay with us.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you in the first instance is about your transformation from a good Tel Aviv boy to where you are today at the very edges, the fringes of Israel's establishment and understanding of what is a good Jewish boy.
It didn't happen one day. Many people ask me, how did you see the light or the darkness? It was an ongoing process of starting to go to the occupied territories and to open my eyes there. And it was really, from my point of view, a magnificent, amazing process, how gradually my eyes opened up and my mind opened up until I realized what I realized. And obviously I changed my views dramatically. And by the way, this process is still going on.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday you spoke about Israel's addiction to the occupation and the fact that there's no cost. It's a cost-free occupation.
Absolutely. It's one of the very few occupations in which I'm not sure that the occupier earns much out of it, but for sure he doesn't pay any price for it. And this is a very bad message, because this means that the occupation will continue as long as the occupier doesn't pay anything for the occupation. It will continue forever.
So being addicted, the analogy you used is, we need to send it to rehab. The carrots are not working.
Absolutely, and this was my message also in my lecture. As long as you let Israel enjoy the occupation, as long as Israel doesn't pay a price and is not being punished for the occupation will continue. The occupier will continue to enjoy whatever he enjoys, and there is no incentive to put an end to the occupation.
And one of the things that most, I think, troubled you and certainly came across in your presentation was the way in which Israeli society has accepted it. It's normal. There's no thought of the people living 20 kilometers away.
Yeah, because there is a very, very efficient brainwash machinery, which includes mainly the Israeli media, the Israeli education system, but above all the Israeli media and the Israeli political sphere, which teaches the people that we have no other choice, that occupation is part and parcel of our life and not such a bad part of our life, and there is no other alternative. We can, if we want to exist, we have to maintain the occupation. That's the only way to exist.
And part and parcel in that indoctrination, you told us a story about the 2 dogs that were killed in one of the Gaza wars, one an Israeli dog inside Gaza, another one in Sredot.
Yeah, it's just to demonstrate the dehumanization of the Palestinian and Israeli media. It's quite an exceptional example, but still it should be told. When those 2 dogs got front page coverage in the popular Israeli newspapers, while tens of Palestinians who were killed in the very same days hardly got any face, any names, any human face.
Yeah. One of Zionism's, the great conundrum with Zionism is that it wants all of the land, wants to be Jewish, and it wants to be democratic. But the reality is you can only have 2 of the 3. Land and Jewish, but not democratic. Democratic Jewish, not all the land. Land and Jewish, and not democratic. What are our steps forward as an international solidarity movement?
As I said, I think that the old discourse of speaking about the 2-state solution, which was a very right goal, a very just goal, a very maybe even realistic goal, But I'm afraid we missed the train, and I'm afraid that this train will not get back to the station. If we realize this, we have to change the discourse, because you cannot continue to struggle yesterday's war or yesterday's struggle. And if you agree with me that nobody will evacuate 700,000 settlers, and I don't agree, there is no viable Palestinian state and no justice without evacuating all of them, all the 700,000, including in East Jerusalem. If we don't do it, we don't have a solution. We don't have justice, or relatively justice. Therefore, we have to change the discourse and start to speak about the alternative, which is equal rights.
Yeah. And in that one state, let's talk about the BDS movement, boycott, divestments and sanctions. And you spoke about particularly a moment in Israeli society, within Israel, when it was a cataclysm, and that was when the Austrian airlines, not the Australian airlines, cancelled flights into Tel Aviv.
Right. I saw how the Israelis got crazy from closing the airport for maybe 24 hours. All the airlines followed Austrian airlines, or most of the airlines followed the Austrian airlines, and only the Israeli airline continued to fly. And I saw that it could be such an efficient, non-violent tool to put pressure on Israel. That's just a demonstration how pressure would work on Israel if it will be a real pressure in which Israelis will have to pay personally for the occupation.
Because Israel craves that legitimacy, yeah? Today, the agents of the State of Israel, and whether they be Jewish or Israeli lobbies, Jewish businessmen and women, and they're using their very efficient lobbying techniques, laws are getting passed around the world, North America and Europe, to criminalize BDIS.
Yeah, this is an unbelievable phenomenon, because boycott is a legitimate tool. Israel is calling the world to boycott Hamas, to boycott Iran. I mean, the world is putting sanction on Russia, putting sanction on North Korea. I mean, it's a total legitimate tool. How can it become a criminal step? I don't understand. But I think that by the end of the day, those laws only show the weakness of Israel and the Israeli case. Because if you need legislation in order to prevent sanctions, then you are in a very bad shape.
Mm-hmm. And Israeli society today, I mean, you're at the outlier, and you talked about, the gradual change from good Tel Aviv boy to where you are today. Where are you? Are you in the minority, vast minority, somewhat minority? Where are you today?
No, I'm in a total marginal minority. Total marginal minority, but I can see the changes. The one-state solution, for example, couldn't be even mentioned 1 or 2 years ago. You hear more and more talking about it. First of all, the settlers talk about it, but they speak about the one apartheid state, yeah. But they speak about it, and we speak about it, few of us. It is slowly, very slowly, but surely becoming a legitimate argument. And, those things will not happen one day. And many times, changes don't go in a linear way, gradual. Many times, and you saw it in South Africa, there are very, very small changes, and all of a sudden a huge change. Mm-hmm. And you never know when will it come.
The tipping point.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, from most of our listeners are heavily involved in solidarity activism for the Palestinian cause and justice for the Palestinians and Israelis. Where do you think they should direct their energies?
First of all, and above all, in 2 directions. One is to make more Australians and Australian politicians aware to what's going on, just to make them know, because I think that the majority of Australia, including the majority of Australian politicians, know nothing, and what they know is wrong. They don't know the truth. Let's tell them the truth. And then, obviously, to put more and more pressure on your local politicians to change Australians' attitudes, official attitudes, and any sign of solidarity with the Palestinians, any kind of aid, any kind of missions to Palestine are obviously very welcome.
Fantastic. Gideon Levy, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy your stay in Australia.
With this, we've come to the end of this week's episode of Palestine Remembered. Do not forget to tune in next Saturday, 9:30 in the morning. Until then, this is Nasser, Robert, and Yusuf wishing you the best of time and salam.